Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rusty Berg. Welcome back to the Antique Automotive Acres, coming to you from somewhere in southeastern Michigan, where the future of the car is not today. It's a different car. It's a little bit different. I'm wrapped up the coolant flush on Hazel, my 1906 Rio Model B, and have moved on to other projects even after filming the coolant flush process on Hazel. I have been continuing to work on other cars in the fleet. However, the next high priority project car is this car here, Eleanor, my 1914 Studebaker Model SC-4. A little bit different automobile than Hazel the Rio, as evidenced by the fact that it is 8 years newer. So still a horseless carriage by definition of the Horseless Carriage Club of America. And if you're very interested, or even not even very interested, but somewhat interested about learning more about that, the Horseless Carriage Club of America, a great resource for these early automobiles. You can find them online at hcca.org. I am a standing member in, I believe, I hope, good name. Haven't done anything to make them mad at me yet, so we'll go with that. But it's a group of folks that are dedicated to automobiles that are from the very early 1916 era and earlier, what they define as the horseless carriage. You'll also hear the term brassier automobile. Although Eleanor doesn't look the part, she does very much fit into the brass era definition. We'll get into a little bit about that in this video today. The other thing I'd like to highlight is Studebaker, a name that some folks again might not be familiar with, and we'll get into a little bit of the history of Studebaker in this video. What I'd like to record and put up for you to watch today is an overview of this car. From my experience on working on the Rio, trying to record the whole project in one video makes for a very long series of videos, which might be entertaining, but also, does get a little bit stale. It is a couple of weeks later after I videoed that coolant flush series. Many things have changed. We've come from the frozen, frosty tundra of Michigan to now the mud season of Michigan, and we're getting close to getting our cars back out on the road again because things are finally warming up a bit. I just need it to dry out some more, although you might see in the frame here that Eleanor has been out a bit and the mud has made its mark. Car wash in the near future. So for this video today, I'd like to give an overview of the car, a little bit of the history of Studebaker, the company itself, and what my plans are for what project I actually have to do on this car. There's a couple, but I am on a bit of a deadline, so check your local listings at what time it is. It is currently roughly April of 2022 here in southeastern Michigan when I'm recording this video. I have signed Eleanor up to be at the Studebaker National Meet in May, first week of May in South Bend, Indiana, which means I have some things I need to get done. Apparently, intrigue and deadlines make for entertaining videos. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get things started? So for this brief overview video, I figured I would deploy my handheld GoPro camera again, but I'm also working on making sure I don't make my viewers seasick, so I have upgraded the technology a bit with a little bit of a steady cam and also with a newer camera with some better algorithms to it to help, again, reduce the seasickness. So with that, I will say that I'm still learning the equipment. I hope it's going to be better, but I'm not making all the promises, but we're going to give it our best shot. So this is Eleanor, my 1914 Studebaker Model SC-4, and the reason it is a Model SC-4 is because, as you can see here in the engine bay, as I pan down a hair, that the engine is a 4-cylinder. So we've got 3 more than the Rio, and it is a 197 cubic inch, what is called a valve-in-block motor. So much like the Rio, the valves open up into the combustion chamber as opposed to coming down from above the head, what would sometimes be called an overhead valve design. This engine displaces 197-ish cubic inches, making about 30 horsepower. It's 3.5-inch bore by 4-inch stroke, and there's a lot of features on this engine that make it really advanced for its time. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the car. So get out of the wrong direction. Sorry, see, telling you I'm still working on those details. So Studebaker. Studebaker itself was a company that had existed up to about 1966 and was originally founded in the 1850s, 1852, I believe. So they were already a 60-year-old company when this car was made. And being a 60-year-old company, they had already been very well established in the business of making horse-drawn carriages. In fact, Studebaker is recognized as one of the few companies to actually successfully transition out of making horse-drawn buggies and making these newfangled horseless carriages. So they had already been established as a well-known purveyor of horse-drawn buggies, and use that established name and established dealership network. So even back in the day, they had dealerships in, much like we're used to today, going down to your local dealership for your car to get things serviced or even to buy your car. I'm walking around one of the posts right now. That they were an established dealership network that would sell you and service your horse-drawn carriage. So, because much like cars, carriages have moving parts that might need fixing. So they were able to leverage that dealership network to bring cars to the market for the people, although they were hedging their bets at this time. It's a unique fact that Studebaker, the company, was based in South Bend, Indiana for the entirety of its life. However, this car, Eleanor, was not built in South Bend, Indiana. At this time, Studebaker was still making more money selling horse-drawn carriages than they were selling cars, and they were hedging their bets, and Eleanor was actually made here in Southeast Michigan in Detroit on Paquette Avenue. And I can testify that what's kind of neat about Eleanor is that she is one of the few cars I have that I can actually take back to the factory where she was made. The building where the body was built, so this the touring body here, is now the Ford Model T Paquette Avenue plant. In a fun fact of history, Henry Ford started building Ford Model Ts on Paquette Avenue in Detroit, and then as he outgrew the operation, moving to Highland Park, he ended up selling the building to a company that ended up becoming part of Studebaker. So just sort of a unique fact that on the 105th birthday of this car, 2019, before the world stopped spinning a little bit, I was able to take Eleanor back to Detroit, probably for the first time in over 80 or 90 years, because this car was from North Dakota, and have a picture of her taken in front of the building she was made in. So a real unique fact. So a little bit more of the details of the car. Eleanor is a unrestored original, but maintained throughout her life. So she's been repainted at some point in the proper colors. That blue and black would have been as she was from the factory, but at the same time there are things that are very original on this car, like the wood spoke wheels. These are the original double gross shagbark hickory demountable rims that she came with from the factory, and you can even see as well that the body itself is also very original. This is the original leather interior. Still has the original horsehair stuffing inside. Yes, horsehair was what they used to stuff seats back in the day. The original leather trim panels, the wood floorboards, even a little bit of the carpet. If I can gracefully stick the camera down and in, you can see this purple trim panel is actually part of the original carpeting that was inside this car when it came from the factory. So a very well-maintained car, very original, just had a lot of maintenance over the years. I need to angle you down a bit. Sorry, I'm still learning some of these controls, but very original car. So one last thing I'd like to show. Again, I mentioned that Studebaker was a real established mark, and they were well known for quality automobiles. This was not a cheap car like other cars that were offered at the time, but at the same time it was a well manufactured, and this is an original ad from 1914. It's from a Wisconsin newspaper, and you can kind of see the phrase there, touting the features, but you buy the car. You buy it because it's a Studebaker. They were standing behind that name. Okay, so we're going to give it a shot to start the Studebaker. She usually starts pretty easy, so I am using a separate camera to catch the engine in action as it starts off. We'll see if I can actually synchronize these things and make them work. So step one, open the door, which these old touring bodies, because they're made of wood, and you can see that all throughout here, they do tend to sag a little, and Eleanor's doors are a little stiff. But let me point out some of the driving controls that you won't be able to see while we're sitting there. So those are the clutches on the left. The gas throttle is in the center, a little bit odd. But that was sort of what they did in transition from right-hand drive, which this was the first year for Studebaker to be left-hand drive. And then the brake on the right. And then you have your gear shift for the 3-speed transaxle, which is actually at the back of the car. And then handbrake, and then the little cup there is actually lubrication for your clutch. And then the last of the floor controls is the starter button. So you hit that with the heel of your foot, and that's what engages the starter to help that 197 cubic inch Studebaker 4 roar into life. On the kick panel, on the front of the seat, those are the electric lighting controls. So those little buttons are there. You pull them out, and those are what turn on your headlights and tail lights. And then up on the dash, you have your main ignition switch. It's a 2-position switch. You only use one. This car, you could have either started it on dry cell batteries or on SB, which is storage battery. There's what we would consider our normal 12-volt battery underneath. It's underneath the driver's seat, actually. And then just to highlight some more of the controls, you've got your charge and discharge indicator. You've got your speedometer, currently not working on Eleanor. It's something I want to work on getting. And then an oil sight glass. So when you see oil pumping in that glass, there's oil circulating throughout the engine. And then the final control is the carburetor choke. So now, hopefully not making everybody too seasick, I'm going to climb in. and hopefully not knock over the camera as I shake everything. This is precarious at best. Okay, so I'm sitting in the car now. I'm not going to close the door because you have to slam it pretty hard, and that'll cause things to rattle around. So step one, pivot down, is to make sure transmission is in neutral. This car is cold, so I'm going to give it all the choke by pulling that out. I do have the gasoline turned on already. I did reach in, and there's a shutoff valve under the hood. On the steering wheel, if I pivot slightly up a bit, this is a hand throttle, so all the way up is all the way wide open throttle. And then this is your ignition timing. If you remember me talking about the Rio, all the way at the bottom is retarded timing. This is where you want to start the engine. It's firing after top dead center. All the way up is fully advanced timing. Now it's firing before top dead center for optimal power and combustion. So we want to start with the ignition timing retarded. Give her a little hand throttle. I'm going to reach over, and you can see through the steering wheel, this is the ignition switch here, as I pointed out. So you flip that to storage battery. You actually might hear the gauge start indicating that there's a draw. It's saying discharge, which is a good sign. It means the points are closed, ready to fire. And with that, I carefully reach with my foot and hit the button, and she should roar into life. Fingers crossed. And the camera fell. We'll give it another shot. Well, there you have it, folks. I might be able to salvage something from the GoPro, but there's the mighty Studebaker. Now what I'm doing here is I'm advancing the ignition timing. You hear the engine pick up RPMs as it starts running more efficiently. And then I'm also going to reach over and close the choke, open the choke up a bit. She doesn't need that much. You'll hear her start to smooth out a little bit. Still a relatively cold engine. And then I'm not certain if you're going to be able to see it, but that's the oil pump sight gauge. You can see it dribbling oil in there, happily indicating that it's working and pumping oil to the, throughout the engine. So there you have it, a successful Studebaker start. Who said these electric starters weren't going to be a thing of the future? Makes it so much easier. There you have it, folks. You got a chance to see another one of the cars in the Antique Automotive Acres fleet actually run, and you didn't have to wait for videos to see it happen. Eleanor, my 1914 Studebaker SC-4, typically roars right into life. However, you might notice it's a little hazy in here. The rings in this engine are a tiny bit loose, and she does like to smoke a bit, but at the same time, when you're 108 years old, you might earn the right to smoke a bit as well. I'm just kidding. So coming up next, I've got to start working on this car. I've got to pull the water pump out and show you what's going on and start the process of repairing it. And as a bit of a foreshadow, I can't go down to my local Napa and say I need a water pump for a 1914 Studebaker. Usually I get the question, who made Studebaker, which is like nails on a chalkboard. So we're going to have to fix what we've got, and I've got a plan on how to do that. In the meantime, if you liked what you saw, please feel free to maybe subscribe to my channel, like the video. Go ahead and hit that little bell icon there. I think it does something. Bluetooth, YouTube, Bluetooth, Black Magic Analyticals. One of these days I'll actually get good at saying this. if you got any questions or any feedback, let me know how the new camera gear's working out. Or if you got any questions about Studebaker or Eleanor herself, I'd love to hear them. Go ahead and put them down in the comments below. I do make an effort to try and read every comment and reply with answers, or you know, and take your feedback. It's very much appreciated, as again, I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out, as evidenced by the fact that my other GoPro camera that I was filming the engine with took a complete and utter nosedive as I started the engine. So with that, I think, friendly reminder also, I'm on Instagram at Antique Automotive Acres. Feel free to take a look. I do tend to post some pictures. I'm trying to get a little bit better at that as well, giving more updates on what's going on in the shop between videos. And with that, I think that's about it. Yep, told you to like, comment, subscribe. Go ahead and hit the bell icon. Antique Automotive Acres. Yeah, I think I got it. With that, I appreciate you watching the video very much. We'll see you next time.